Okay, hello, welcome everybody to our second webinar in this series, Building a World-Class Team and Organisation, the Four Essentials. My name is Pádraig Berry and I'm the CEO of TTI Success Insights Ireland and One Focus Business Consultants. And I'm joined today by my co-panelist, my co-presenter, Brian Downs. You want to say hello, Brian?
Hi Pádraig, thanks a million. Hello everyone. I work with Pádraig. I'm certified in all the TTI SII assessments, and I'm also an associate consultant with One Focus, and I specialise in performance development and leadership development.
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Brian. Okay, this webinar will take about 45 minutes, and we'll have a Q&A at the end that will probably take 5 to 10 minutes, or maybe a little less on the webinar. We're happy if you want to just key in your name and details there, plus pop it up so we know, say hello to us so we know who's there, and we'll kick off the webinar. You're in good company. We've got a good attendance today, and we hope that all of you have lots of questions. Typically, we answer the questions at the end of the webinar, but if we get particularly interesting ones that we think are relevant to what we're talking about, we will answer them as we go along. We've been in this business for 20-something odd years, and over the years we've formed a view, working with like hundreds of clients, we've formed a view about a few simple things that really help you build and maintain a successful business, a world-class business. I'm not talking about magic bullets. There are no magic bullets here, but solid tools and processes that really make a difference. And this webinar series is trying to give you, an overview of what these processes and systems are and how they can be integrated into one, if you wish, initiative or one that you can actually take into an organization, into your organization, to improve it. I hope that over the last few days you read the blogs that were sent out to you. They're useful to read in advance because they prime you and position what we're going to talk about in the webinar, and that's what sort of gets you ready and improve learning. So let's start. Here we go. Building a world-class team and organization, the four essentials. So there are four elements to this, or four parts to this series. The first one is that we dealt with 2 weeks ago, was how to hire the perfect person every time. And really what we were trying to do in that webinar was understand the benchmarking process. So that in understanding it, you could see how you would clearly identify what a job required and therefore how you could find the right person to fill the job. So what you're really trying to do was give yourself the best possible shot at hiring the right person for the role. Again, that webinar was recorded, as will this one be, and we sent you a link to it. If you didn't get the link, or if you've lost the link, let us know and we'd be happy to send it to you again. And again, after this webinar is over, we'll send you a link to this one so you can review it at your leisure. Today's webinar answers the question, how do I keep the good people? And today what we'll be looking at is how to build engagement, because we believe the secret to keeping good people is you build engagement, that they engage with you and they engage the company. So how do you build engagement? How do you develop your people to meet your current and future needs?
And yes, having kept your best people, webinar 3 in a fortnight will answer the question, how do I lead these people? So this webinar is all about developing a shared vision with your team and converting it into an execution plan that they own. And then 2 weeks later for webinar 4, we'll focus on how to manage the performance of your people. And here we explore a range of tools to allow you to build accountability, such as peer reviews, war rooms, performance reviews, and development plans.
Yeah, you know, the total 4 webinars are, as I said at the beginning, they are sort of an integrated approach or an integrated system. So we encourage you to attend all 4 webinars, listen to them all, and see this as a system, a total approach. You can use bits and pieces, certainly, but you look at the total approach to developing a world-class team. Now, you see the slide up there in front of you. I know that you've seen it before because I presented in the first webinar, but I want to labour the point just a little bit because I think this is so important, it needs to be reiterated regularly. There are 4 decisions that Rockefeller, Vern Harsh in his book said, Rockefeller said you had to do, or you had to make, particularly in growth companies. And the decisions were people, strategy, execution, and cash. And people was really about the right people in the right seats. That's really what it's about, keeping good people, getting the right people and getting them in the right seats. A strategy, which is about driving revenue growth, is really about doing the right thing. So if you have the right people in the right seats, and then you get those people, agree with those people, what are the right things to do? And that leads on to execution, which then doing the right things right. So we have the right people, we have them in the right seats, we agree what the right things to do are to drive revenue and growth, and then we do them right. We have flawless execution. And the last, of course, is cash, the oxygen for your business. We don't deal with the 4th, and we only focus on the first 3, people, strategy, and execution. So what do you think, guys? Do you think our 4 decisions are right? Do you think our order of priority, people, strategy, execution, and cash in that order is correct? Type in what you think, and I'll be interested to hear what your thoughts are. What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I do agree. And if you have the right people, they're going to come up with the strategy and execute that strategy flawlessly. But the right strategy without the people to own it and execute it, look, it's bound to fail. So much better to get the talent around you and then build the strategy with them.
Yeah,
as opposed
absolutely. Absolutely. And how would you suggest, I popped up our DEAP slide, how would you suggest we do that?
So look, we have a fairly simple model here. It's the DEAP model, the DEAP system from TTI Success Insights Ireland. And DEAP stands for Discover, which is find the right people, engage or retain, advance, which is develop, and perform, which is lead or manage. And we discussed Discover in the first webinar of the series, and for this one we're going to focus on engage. And I would suggest that companies who strategically use the resources to provide a superior employment experience will stand out more dramatically than ever when compared to competitors with a poor employer brand. And going forward, company survival, staff development, and employee job stability will all be entwined. Businesses will be competing to retain the top talent that will help them to thrive.
Absolutely, Brian. I see this all the time. I'm sure you do too with our clients. That there is a huge competition for talent and finding it and retaining it, particularly with younger talent. They have a different attitude to organizations. They will go where the opportunity is or where they feel they're being developed and grown and so on and so forth. And that sort of leads me into the question, how do you actually retain your best people? How do you keep this talent? And the answer is simple, I think. The answer is that you keep people, you don't keep them. They stay, and they stay because they want to stay. And people stay where they feel engaged. And engaged means people who are involved with, who are committed to, who are enthusiastic and passionate about their work and about where they work. So engagement isn't about the company or the employer doing something to his people or her people. It's about what they do. They engage. It's about them. Well, that's my view anyway, you know.
But why do you think people stay or leave then?
Well, I've got my own views on this, but it's interesting. The research has shown very, very clearly 3 reasons, and they've ordered them here. You see them up there on the slide. Poor relations or communication with the superior. So people leave because of poor relationship or poor communications. They leave because of a lack of sense of room for growth and advancement. So they feel they're banging their head in the ceiling, or they don't see any opportunity in front of them, or they don't seem to be growing right now. And job-related stress, and of course we know where that comes from, a poor job-person match. They weren't hired right in the beginning.
Yeah, I have a particular interest in that first one there. You know, I really believe that communication is a key issue. And if you think about that old saying, people don't quit jobs, they quit bad managers. You know, and it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. You know, there's no doubt about it. And I mean, my broad view is that in general, people don't want to leave a job that plays their strengths and plays their talents, you know, where they're properly managed, where they can see a career progression and so on. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Little poll here. Maybe send me some send me a few comments there. Be interested to hear what you all have to say. So here we have an interesting slide, Brian. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, I really like this. Just because the figures are so stark, when an employee isn't engaged, obviously their productivity is going to suffer. But there's also a wider cost to the organisation of lost opportunity. So, the untold business benefits that the person could have contributed if their energy and creativity were flowing into their work. And when that person goes beyond being disengaged, becoming seriously negative, the effect on the organisation is devastating.
Well, that's what this slide is showing, isn't it? I mean, those scores there, 30, 55, and 15% engaged, non-engaged, and actively disengaged. They come from a Gallup 2015 study, and 55% not engaged, 15% actively disengaged.
And that's a scary statistic. And these are consistent statistics year after year, with very little improvement in the last decade. And I think we've all experienced the bad apple from time to time. In fact, Phelps, Mitchell, and Binton reckon that one bad apple can reduce team performance by 30 to 40%. So engagement or lack of engagement is a real issue with real ramifications.
Absolutely. But I suppose the only thing I say is let's not despair. There is hope, because Watson White worldwide found that work engagement can in fact be improved through adopting certain workplace behavioural practices that address issues such as, I'm going to read our little list here: supervisory communication, job design, resource support, working conditions, corporate culture, and leadership style. And support what you were saying earlier, the point you made about communications. The researchers also found convincing evidence that companies with highly effective internal communication practices produce superior financial performance, greater organizational stability, have higher market premiums, larger returns, greater employee engagement, and lower turnover. So I suppose the question we have to ask is, how do you accomplish, or how do you fill the Watson Wise shopping list? How do you actually keep your best people? Those you really don't want to lose and engage, those who are not fully engaged. And I suggest that the answer may be simple, though not easy. So I'm going to offer you here what I think are 5 areas of focus, or 5 strategies to build engagement. The first one I want to suggest to you is, and again, you'll be familiar with this one, Brian, anybody who was at the first webinar will know it, is you've got to build from the beginning. So you have to hire right. You must benchmark. You must understand what you're hiring for. You must ask the job. The job must talk and tell you under the headings of like behaviors, motivators, competency, acumen, hard skills, soft skills, experience, certification, and so on and so forth. You must understand what the job actually requires. And then you have to hire for that job, not for your own preferences. Hire for the job is critical. You have to get a job person match. The second strategy, I believe, is critical for building engagement, is you have to rebuild the existing team. You have to do the exact same exercise on the incumbents in a team as you would do with new hires. What's the difference? You should look at your existing people, look at the roles, benchmark the roles, compare them to the roles, see where the gaps are, and help them then develop in those roles so they become more effective. And that leads directly into the third strategy for building engagement, which is succession planning. You have to build personal development plans for now and the future, so people have proper career progression, and also so you have a pipeline of people coming along to fill future roles. I think, again, just going back to the list of things that were given, remember they were poor relationships, communications, lack of a sense of room for growth advancements, and job-related stress from a poor match. And so the fourth area I believe that you need to focus on, the fourth strategy for building engagement, is building competence of communication. Get everybody talking the same language, get everybody communicating, develop mutual understanding, intrapersonal, interpersonal understanding, team development. I think is really, really important. And the last, on our fifth strategy, is build congruence. Get everybody singing from the same hymn sheet, so everybody knows where the organisation is going and where they fit in, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm sure there are lots of other initiatives, that one can undertake that are also powerful, but we found those 5 strategies to be particularly useful. And I again encourage you there, all our listeners here, if you have any other initiatives that you believe are really help build engagement, let us know. We think these are important, but we're happy to share any other ones that you may have. So maybe let's look at the one-on-one. Would you want to take us through a few of them, Brian?
Okay, so if we look at the first, then build from the beginning. As we discussed in the first webinar, you hire right by matching people to jobs. So that means benchmark jobs so that you understand what mix of behaviors, motivators, competencies, talent, human hard skills, education, etc. is really required to be successful in each role and in the organizational culture. And then hire people with the appropriate mix of these so that they fit naturally into their roles and into the culture. They feel at home in the roles, and you know, performance comes easy to them. Success follows. And if we look at a sample benchmark for a job, first the behaviours piece, and these are the behaviours most needed for a job. And there's 12 behavioural traits that we look at, and this is really the how we do what we do. And if you just run through them quickly, you've got customer-oriented, competitiveness, versatility, frequent change, frequent interaction with others, analysis of data, urgency, organised workplace, consistency, follow-up and follow-through, customer relations, and following policy. And then driving forces, Padraig.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the behaviours that you just listed there, the how you do what you do, then clearly the question is, why do you do what you do? And driving forces are really about identifying what you care most and least about, what drives you, why you get out of bed in the morning, why do you act the way you do, what's the inner motivation for your behaviour. And by the way, very importantly, what they consider to be a reward. If you look at that profile in front of you, the person there is high resourceful. I mean, they're looking for return on investment, return on time. So their reward, understanding these things is very, very important. Motivators, as you can see there, these driving forces are measured in 6 areas with each. So knowledge, for example, utility, surroundings, others, power, methodologies. And each has 2 sides. So knowledge is instinctive, intellectual. Utility itself is resourceful, and so on. And this gives us 12 driving forces. And these are critical to understanding why one does what one does.
So the third element then of the benchmark is competencies. These are skills you've been recognized for. Now, all jobs require a variety of skills such as planning and organization, resilience, conflict management, continuous learning, etc. And down through the list of 25. And these are 25 professional competencies that are generally agreed to be necessary in the workplace in varying degrees according to the position. So how important or unimportant each skill is for effective job performance will vary from job to job. And it may also be unique for similar jobs at different companies. So, for example, somebody working in sales at company X and somebody working in sales at company Y may have very different competencies.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and and the fourth element we're looking here is the whole area of acumen, and this is a really interesting one because acumen is talking about the future, it's talking about potential, what the person potentially can and cannot do. I mean, we've looked at behaviours, how they do what they do, driving forces, why they do what they do, competence, what they've been recognised for in terms of professional skills, and now looking at potential, their ability to make good business decisions, their ability to make good judgment calls, to discern what's going on and what isn't going on. So it's interesting, right now people are hiring not just for proven track record and talent, but also for potential going forward. So I think that again, just if you just popped it up there, I mean, any thoughts on this? This is an overall benchmark there, Brian.
Yeah. So, and this is what a benchmark looks like. So what we have here then is the behaviours most needed for a job, the motivator that the job rewards, the skills required to perform it at a high level, and the acumen showing one's performance potential. And it's a powerful set of data.
It is, because if you look here, for example, once you have this benchmark in place, you can very easily match something against. And there again, here is looking at behaviours. You can see the blue dots, the individual, the little white hoop is what the job requires. Here you can see it for the whole area of motivators and driving forces, for competencies and skills, for acumen indicators, and so on. So what you end up with is when you've completed a job benchmark like this, you really can see where somebody has gaps, where somebody is strong, how they match the job, and this is the basis of engagement. When you can say to somebody, here's where you're strong, here's your weak, here's what you need to do, here's how you can become better in the role, here's how you can move on to a new role, then it becomes a very, very powerful tool.
And of course, the same applies to the existing team. So our second strategy for engagement is to rebuild the existing team. And you can apply the exact same approach to existing staff, benchmark their jobs and match them against their roles. Then you change their roles and responsibility as necessary to allow them to be successful in the job. And if there is no possible fit, help them to move to an alternative opportunity elsewhere where they can actually enjoy success.
Well, some people may have a challenge or a difficulty with that last statement. Yeah, I don't know what you think. People, send me a few texts there and let me know. Do you think that if somebody doesn't fit, we should move them on? And I want to share a quick story with you. I remember a client of mine had somebody working in the team who really wasn't being productive, wasn't being successful. In fact, was damaging the team and damaging the company. And I was always encouraging him to move this person on. And he resisted. And then one day I asked him why. He said, yeah, I'm not a ruthless man. And I said, you are. And I said to him, rigorous is that you sit down with the individual, you identify what the job requires, you identify what they have, you see if there's a match, and if there isn't a match, you help them find a match where they can be successful. I said, you are being ruthless. What you're doing is destroying this person's life. They're there in a job where they are failing and will continue to fail. They're damaging the team, they're damaging the company. If you were truly rigorous as opposed to ruthless, you'd help them move on and become successful. So again, I don't know what you all think. You have strong views in this. And what are your thoughts, Brian?
I think the important word here is help. This is really about helping people be better at what they do, or be in a job that they enjoy, and really give themselves the best chance of being successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know my views. And this sort of leads into our third strategy on how to build engagement, and it's really about succession planning. And the key here is to build individual and professional development plans for now and for future career progression. I mean, we've already seen there in the little slideshow we ran through that you can assess talent, you can prepare a gap analysis on an employee's current role, but you can also do it on future roles. If you benchmark future roles, you can measure the person against that and put a development plan in place to allow them to actually move on and take the next step in their career. So this is really, really important. And interesting enough, we have a website where you can actually produce, if you've already done a review or a profile of an individual, an assessment of an individual, you can take the key elements, key them into this website, and it'll produce a blank professional and personal development plan for that individual. And this is very, very powerful and very, very useful. And you end up with something like this, for example, where you can see a performance plan, an overview of responsibilities, key accountabilities, the gap analysis. You can see particular areas that need to develop like customer service, self-management, interpersonal skills, and so on. And very, very useful tool, very, very important in building engagement.
Look, I think it's worth summarising what we're saying about succession planning here. So, firstly, benchmark roles, measure people against them for a career progression. From this, you can put the personal development plans we've just looked at in place to make sure you have the talent to fill the roles as they become available. And this way, you can develop a pipeline of engaged people with the motivation, the competencies, the behaviours, the acumen, etc., that you need to drive the organisation forward. And then I think, hire for the future. So hiring and developing your team, it is an investment. Whatever way you look at it, it's an investment in the future. And when you're hiring, you need to keep an eye on your succession plan. So, inject a stream of talent into the veins of the company suggested by Jim Collins in Good to Great. I know that's one of your favourite books. But match to your current and future needs. Yeah. And if you've benchmarked the various roles, you can look at people not just in the context of their current position, but also in the context of future possible roles. And I think that's very, very important. And I think then it's important to be candid with people. So in interviews and in general, being candid, you need to be candid with your team on the succession plan, make it visible, put it up on the wall. Usually succession planning, it's not really spoken about because, maybe it's because so few organizations have a succession plan. But it is important, and you need to move forward with that. And this slide here, Paul, I know you found this one particularly interesting. Up on the left hand side, talking about potential and assessing based on the bottom does not meet expectations, meets expectations, exceeds expectations. It's just a model you can use.
Yeah, well, what I always find is that just people are just so reluctant to put this stuff up, to put up in front of people, say, where are you? Do you actually have potential? What is that potential? How can you develop? To actually have those questions, it's almost as though organisations sort of run away from asking the hard questions, isn't it?
It is, and I think also for the people being assessed, it can be somewhat defensive sometimes.
Yes, well, actually, well, it's funny, Brian. There are a couple of comments came in there about that, from 2 or 3 comments here from people actually talking about. It's all very well to say this, but the challenge, of course, as people having the skills to move on, or they're old, or they've been in a job for a long time. There are plenty of comments here about it. But the reality is, of course, that you have to make these hard decisions. That's just the reality of business, isn't it?
You do. I think next, you need to ask what's next. So be the one to bring up the subject with the team. Engage people in conversation. And the more frequently you have these conversations, the easier they are to have. But don't wait for someone to tell you that they're leaving before you bring up the subject.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. I mean, as they're heading out the door, it's a bit late to have the conversation about the next step.
Yes, but the conversations do get easier. They become easier to have. And I think finally, and this is really important, don't assume. As you can see the picture of an ass. So, assume it makes an ass of you and me, especially when you discover that some of your team have no interest in career progression and want to stay in their current roles, which is fine, as long as you know that. But if you haven't had the discussion, you'll never know. Or when you have a development plan coming out of a proper benchmark gap analysis, make sure that the plan is in line with the individual's personal ambitions on and off the job. I mean, they may have other plans, but you won't know until you have the discussion, until you have the conversation with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are 5 good tips, I think, for succession planning. And I think they are. And it's really all about fessing up, isn't it? It's really all about being willing to put it out there and say what needs to be done and have the conversations with people. But back to our strategies for building engagement. So we said number 1, the first strategy for building engagement was to build from the beginning. So hire right, benchmark the role, match people to the benchmarks. Number 2 was rebuild the existing team using the exact same approach as you would when you're hiring. So use the same job, person match, if you wish. And number 3 was to build a succession plan with individualized personal and professional development plans in place for current and future roles. So there are our first 3 strategies. And now number 4, I'm suggesting build competence and communications. And so you use the same tools to coach employees. So if you've gone through this process and you've produced a gap analysis and you've done all this, you also produce coaching reports and your development plans. And you use these, assuming, by the way, just to make a point, assuming you've actually trained the coach, so the person who's actually going to be debriefing people and is going to be working with them like the boss has to have been developed themselves as well. There's no point in debriefing people when they haven't addressed their own issues. So they need to be developed in coaching skills and training, communication and leadership skills and so on, as part of their own personal and professional development plans, so they're capable of doing it. But I think it's really important that you use the tools coming out of it to actually coach people. And you have, within the coaching, or within this process, you have this opportunity. So, you have individual coaching reports and debriefing guides, which help you coach your team in the areas of behaviours, motivators, acumen, competence, and so on. And if you look at the slide there, it just gives you, again, a simple example. It talks about, here we're looking at behaviours, for example, general characteristics, the value of the individual to the organisation, checklists for communicating, how to communicate, how not to communicate, perceptions, how the person sees themselves, how others see themselves, descriptors of the role, areas for improvement, and so on. And, I'm running into things like the keys to motivating, keys to managing, the worldview, self-view, capacity for problem solving, and so on. And, once you coach people, you go through this process with them. Number 1, the individual develops a very, very clear understanding of themselves. You develop a very clear understanding of them. Communication improves, competence improves, and people just feel more motivated and more engaged. You're having a meaningful conversation, and you know how to communicate and how to work with people. So, I think that, again, the whole area of what can you do to build engagement, I think this area of building, of coaching people, building communications, building competence is really, really important. Coming out of the development plans, coming out of the gap analysis. And of course, just to make the point, you can take these reports
and you can actually produce group wheels. So you can show a group profile, you can show where people fit within a group and how people in the group communicate with each other. So there's all sorts of opportunities there to build workshops, communication workshops, and other type of things around this to improve communications and to improve confidence. And then, of course, our last strategy, so we had 4 strategies we've talked about. Our 5th one is to build congruence. And really, what we mean by building congruence is that everybody's involved in strategic planning. When people understand and buy into what you, the owner or the manager of the operation, are trying to accomplish, and when they see how the roles and the contributions fit into this plan, of course, assuming you've done all of the other things we talked about, how this organizational plan actually supports their plan and their career progression and so on, then there's a real sense of congruence, and there's a real sense of buy-in, and people get very, very excited and very, very engaged when they feel that they're part of a bigger picture, they're part of the plan, that their role is important. And if you see this model I've just popped up there, the one thing plan, when people can clearly see what the organization is trying to accomplish, what it stands for, where it's going, where they fit into the big picture, why the contribution is important, and so on and so forth, then of course they become much more engaged. So we'll discuss this model, of course, in the next webinar in 2 weeks' time. We'll discuss this model in much greater detail. But again, it's just put it up there so you have a sense of it. And as I said, simple but not easy. So let's recap. In our webinar today, we want to answer the question, how do I keep the good people? That was a fundamental question. And the answer, of course, is how do we build engagement? So that's the answer, is to build engagement and develop the people so as to meet your needs now and in the future. So when we talk about keeping the good people, that's what we mean, building engagement, develop your people so as to meet your needs now and going into the future. And we suggest that research has shown the 3 major reasons people leave are poor relationships or communications with their superior, lack of a sense of room for growth and advancement, job-related stress, again, from a poor job person match. And then we suggested 5 strategies for addressing this. So build from the beginning, hire right, benchmark the roles, match people to the benchmarks. Rebuild the existing team using the exact same process. Succession plan, build personal and professional development plans for now and the future, for career progression and for the organization needs. Build competence and communication, get everybody talking the same language, and build congruence, get everybody singing from the same hymn sheet. Now, in our next webinar in this series in 2 weeks' time, we'll offer some answers to the question, how do you actually lead your people? Once you've got these people on board, you've hired the right people and you've engaged the right people, how do you lead them? And this webinar will be about developing a shared vision with your team and converting it into an execution plan that they own. And then our last webinar, in webinar 4, 2 weeks later, we'll focus on how to manage the performance of the people. And again, we look at Bryce at the beginning of this webinar. We look at tools such as peer reviews, war rooms, performance reviews, and development plans, and so on, how you can actually manage your people to superior performance. So that's about it. That's the main points I think we wanted to make. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll do a Q&A in a few minutes. We go back and look at the questions we have and we'll answer them. Before we do the Q&A, I just want to tell you that you have the link, as I said, for the last webinar. If you need it again, pop in a little message to me in the chat box and we'll send it to you. And I want to reiterate our special offer. So I'm going to post a link in the little box there that you can see. I'm going to post a link in just a moment. And the first 10 people who register on this link, we will offer them a free behaviours and motivators report, an assessment, appropriate self-debriefing guides, and then a one-on-one 1 hour meeting with me to review their debriefing guide. This is not available to you, Brian. But
I've had my debriefings already.
Anyway, so I suppose for the rest of you, this is an opportunity for you to get a better insight into how all of this works, and maybe a little more about yourself along the way. So hit that link and get your free assessment. Okay, Brian, do you want to take us into the Q&A there?
Now, yeah, but I actually can't see the questions coming through on my panel for some reason. So I believe you can see them, though, can you?
Okay, fair enough. I will. Let me throw them up, and I'll throw them out. Maybe you will go and answering them. That's easier than you asking me.
Okay.
Okay, I've got one here. To be ruthless and rigorous with this process, it may help to have a consultant or an external coach to help implement. Okay, what's your experience? What's your view?
I think
it's a tough one, isn't it? It's not just rigorous one. It's a very, very tough one.
Yeah, I do think objective advice is incredibly valuable whenever you can get it. Absolutely. I also think it's a learned skill, and you know, like any learned skill, you need to learn from somebody who knows how to apply it.
Right.
You know, I do think certainly in the initial stages, it's very, very important to have somebody with an objective view come in and help with that.
Do you also think, for example, that might be easier in having somebody external to deal with some of these issues? Perhaps they can have a more, I won't say more honest conversation, but perhaps the recipient of the information might be more open to hearing what an external person has to say than somebody with whom they have perhaps a confused relationship.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you know, if we look at what we've been talking about throughout the webinar, Padraig, you know, having these conversations, we're talking about having the ongoing conversations. Over time, that builds trust, but that may not always be there, certainly at the beginning. And it is undoubtedly much easier for somebody who's not directly involved to have that conversation. And I think the person who's hearing the feedback is going to, you know, look at it more positively.
Yeah, I have another question here. Somebody's asked, what experience do we have of actually of taking this exercise and completing its entirety? So the question is, have we taken this process of benchmarking a role, hiring appropriately, benchmarking existing people or incumbents in positions against the role, changing roles, modifying roles, helping people move on, producing development plans, and so on? Have we actually taken this process through? And of course, the answer is we have. But you might want to talk about a case study, one that we're working on currently.
Yeah, look. First, to say it's a very powerful set of tools, and the actually working through the benchmarking all the way through to development plans, and actually delivering some of the development interventions as part of it. Has been a very transformative exercise for organizations. So we're working on a particular project at the moment with a pretty large organization, about 600 people, who are going through a period of strategic change. And you know, we've worked with them. Paul showed you the slide earlier on of the One Thing plan and cascading that down through the organization. And as a result, need for benchmarking, gap analysis, and development plans has become very apparent. And you know, the guys involved, the senior people involved, are really seeing a very, very strong benefit from having done it. Now we're at the start of the process with this company. We know, as in Padraig and I will know what's to come, and really for them we've done. Is it two or three benchmarks at this stage?
Yes.
Yeah, I think 3. You know, they have found the process very enjoyable, but very challenging at the same time. And you know, obviously our role is to guide them through it. But it's a very powerful exercise, and they're seeing clear benefits from it because they're helping people.
Yeah,
they're helping their teams be more effective.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I'm a part of the process, and for me personally, observing, they're doing the process in its entirety. They're using the One Thing plan model as well. They're really trying to build a whole new leadership team and really help the company. I think the goal, in fact, is to take the company grow by 10 times to. Over 10 years. It's a big challenge. I have a question here coming in. What was the name of the study from Michelle? The one that listed the elements of engagement and benefits of the same? Well, the answer is if you Google what's and why it's Watson, WATSON, Wyatt, WYATT worldwide, and Google them on engagement. You'll find the study. But if you can't find it, please just drop me a note and I'll send you a link for it. I have another question coming in here from Mary Jordan. She said here, just came in this very moment. These reports provide excellent objective data to enable a valuable conversation with people. Do you have any data to show how many CEOs get this type of support for themselves personally? And the answer is no, we don't. And I'm going to answer this one for a moment, if I may. You can jump in, Brian. Our experience has been that typically when we start the process, the CEO can be reluctant to engage. And we make a very, very strong case to them. This is a strategy process. This is an organizational development process, but they need to understand it themselves. And the way for them to understand it is to do the process themselves. And that's how we actually get them engaged. Of course, once they start the process, everybody wants to know all about themselves. It's their favorite subject. So once they start the process, I start helping them understand their behaviors, their motivators, their competencies, their acumen, and so on and so forth. And you debrief on these processes. They ultimately come to the question of saying, okay, how do I match with my role? In fact, because most of them, of course, are challenged like everybody else. And so in answer to the question, I don't have any data on it, but our practical experience has been that they all need it, they all resist it initially, and they all want it once they get a taste for it. Another question coming in. Go on, Brian, go on.
Sorry, just to add to that, I think, and again, it's not based on anything other than my own experience, that CEOs tend not to look for this. But as you said, Parg, in our experience, once we can make the case to them and actually show them how it works, they very quickly realize the value, and that's really important. The value here is really, really important. The value to an organization.
Yeah, okay, just before I go on to another question there, I just want to remind you all that on the chat box there, we put up the post, we put up the links that we have, and the link is it's up there, very clear for you for the special offer. I encourage you to click the link and get it before it's gone. So it's there for you guys, have a go at it. I have a question here. Can you prepare a team? It's coming in from Nivan. Can you prepare a team for this process in order for them to be less resistant, focusing on the outcomes, etc.? Very good question. That's a really good question. And I can't answer, so I'm going to give it to you, Brian.
I think, before actually getting a team to take the assessments and actually engage in that formal process, there is some work to be done in terms of preparing them. And Nivan is dead right. It is focusing on the outcomes, because I think quite naturally some people will have a skepticism, again, because people don't necessarily understand what's involved and what the output of these assessments are.
Yeah, I also think, Brian, I also think they're afraid. I mean, the reality, a lot of people are fearful. They don't know what this is all about. They're people, if I am benchmarked against a role, maybe I'll be found wanting. What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my career? So I think Nivan's question is a very good question. And yes, the answer, I think, is you can, isn't it? You can. But you have to go gently. You have to go slowly. You have to introduce it. The CEO, absolutely, to get back to Mary's question earlier, that the CEO absolutely has to be engaged, or the leader of the team has to be engaged. They have to put themselves out there. When they put themselves out there and they do it first, the rest of the team tend to be a lot less resistant.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's also important to say that it is contextual. It depends on your team. Not all teams are the same, and you need to understand the context of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to wrap it there. I'd like to thank everybody for participating and wish you all well. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget the link. Click on the link and get your free assessment. And I look forward to seeing you all again in 2 weeks. So thanks a lot, folks. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.